Hi, it's me Virginia H. Puda, a Bachelor of Physical Education 3A student and one of the presenters to discuss the development of classroom assessment. So this presentation is prepared by, of course, yours truly, Alexis Nicole Enciso, Mary Antoinette Dreo, Victoria Ete, and John Noel Encinares. So the first group of presenters is done tackling the different types of classroom assessments. And these are the standardized test, non-standardized test, non-reference test, and criterion reference test. In this presentation, the focus of the discussion will be the standardized test, specifically teacher-made test in item formats. And these are the multiple choice, true or false, matching type, completion, close, and essay. So here are the objectives for this topic. At the end of the presentation, you are expected to first, enumerate the different teacher-made tests or assessments. Second, identify the advantages and disadvantages of various classroom assessments. And of course, the third one, create your own sample questions. Let me introduce to you the first teacher-made test, the multiple choice test. So students are asked to choose the best or most accurate response from a list of options, which is a sort of assessment. It requires the student to select from the given options that will make the STEM complete or correct. All incorrect or less appropriate responses are called distractors or foils. In the words of some teachers ngayon sa college na, choose the correct answer with the best of your ability. Naka-caps lock pa yung best of your ability ha. Just makes sense because of the distractors or yung foils na tinatawag. In multiple choice test, yung mga distractors yung dahilan kung bakit nagiging critical yung multiple choice kasi minsan familiar yung mga yun sa pinakasagot. Kaya kailangan nating mag-isip ng ilang beses kung A ba yun o kung B and so on kasi nalilito tayo ng ibang options. Isa sa mga best forms of testing ang multiple choice type of test. For a reason na sa lahat ng standardized test, ito yung pinaka-valuable and pinakagamit na ng mga teachers. Obviously kasi since noong elementary pa lang until now na nasa college na tayo, nag-exist pa rin ang multiple choice test. Due to its flexibility and of course yung objectivity niya pagdating sa scoring. So multiple choice item is considered somewhat na mas mahirap i-construct kaysa ibang objective items. However, ito naman yung mas effective na type of assessment in terms of measuring higher cognitive processes. So there are two parts of the multiple choice test. The first one is the STEM as the introductory part, and the second part is the set of options or alternatives. These are the suggested responses. So sa introductory part, dito pinapresent yung mga item as a problem to be solved, questions asked of the students, or yung mga incomplete statement to be completed. Sa set of options naman, yung mga options, yun yung mga posibleng sagot na pwedeng pagpilian ng mga examinees with the correct answer na tinatawag na key. And the minimum number of options is 3, while the maximum is 5. There are ways of presenting the STEM, and these are the direct question, incomplete statement, and mathematical equation. So multiple choice test includes stimulus material where the item or question is drawn. So yung stimulus material or yung introductory material, sila yung mga added information in the form of chart, graph, stanza, or of poem, or a novel pictorial. So these are the examples of presenting the STEM in 3 ways. First is the direct question, who is the President of the Philippines for EDSA 1? And incomplete statement, the President of the Philippines after EDSA 1 is, then pipili na lang sila ng answers. And of course, the mathematical equation, In the equation 2x plus 3 equals 4, solve for x. Of course, pipili na lang din sila ng answer. So multiple choice test questions, also known as items, can be an effective and efficient way to assess learning outcomes. So we have here the advantages of the multiple choice test. First is quick and simple to answer. So as long as clear yung paggamit mo ng language and nag-provide ka ng easy-to-follow answer ng mga alternatives for your students or examinees na pwede nilang pagpilian, then multiple choice questions should be quick and simple for them to complete. Next one is you can potentially ask more questions. So considering kung gaano katagal masagot ng student mo yung free text na open-ended na question, kung halimbawa, survey mo ay multiple choice questions lang, which is mas madaling sagutan, you could potentially include a lot more questions sa survey na yun. The third one is mobile-friendly. So compared with other types of tests, especially yung may text boxes, multiple choice questions are much easier to complete on smartphones and tablets. And when we consider yung Google Form na kapag nag-exam or quiz tayo noong kalagitnaan pa ng pandemic or kahit ngayon, meron pa naman yan, mas madaling sumagot sa phone ng multiple choice, diba? Kasi hindi naman lahat may laptop or any gadgets na magagamit para sa pagsagot ng online surveys or online quiz. It is more important na i-ensure natin yung mga online exams kasi it is simpler to complete on mobile device. The last one is, it is simple to analyze. So when you have only given students a finite list of answers to choose from, there are no worries about having to deal with irrelevant or stupid answers that you might face with an open-ended question. Subsequently, mas madaling i-analyze yung data, mas madaling i-interpret, and mas madaling mag-conclude. Despite the many benefits of multiple choice questions, they do have some shortcomings or yung disadvantages. So it is prudent to be aware of this before constructing a multiple choice test. First, multiple choice test is time-consuming. Time-consuming in terms of looking sa mga options or alternatives na reasonable. Second, multiple choice test is ambiguous. So multiple choice test daw ay nagbibigay ng confusion sa atin. Why? Minsan kasi sa alternatives may mga answer na nakakalito, which needs to think critically before choosing. So third one is students with random answers can still receive a mark. Ito yung kadalasan nangyayari sa pag nagtitake ng multiple choice test. Mula noon hanggang ngayon nangyayari to. Siyempre, kahit hindi talaga alam ng student yung answer sa question, huhulaan na lang. Which mistakes in assessing the student exist? Kasi kapag ganun, parang hindi mo alam as a teacher kung talagang alam ng student yung sagot or hula-hula lang. Pero tama pa rin, di ba? The last one is, test-naive students complain of more than one defensible answer or defensible correct answer. That is why iniiwasan yung mga alternatives or options na pwedeng i-base sa kanilang opinions kasi may mga students na pinaglalaban yung feeling nilang tama na answer para sa kanila. Kahit mali, based sa key to correction. Ang ending kasi, bonus na lang yun. So we have here the suggestions for writing multiple choice test. First, the STEM should be meaningful by itself and should present a definite problem. So a STEM that possesses a clear problem enables the learning outcome to be the main emphasis. However, rather than functioning as a more direct evaluation of students' achievement of the learning target, a STEM that does not present a clear problem may test students' capacity to infer meaning from unclear descriptions. Number 2. The STEM should not contain irrelevant material because this can make test results less reliable and valid. Third one, The STEM should be negatively stated only when significant learning outcomes require it. So negative phrasing can be difficult for students to understand. The negative element should be highlighted in italics or uppercase. For example, which of the following is not cited as an accomplishment of Arroyo administration? So the word not dapat naka-caps lock siya or italic if a significant learning outcome requires it, such as the identification of risky laboratory or clinical practices. Number 4, the STEM should be a question or a partial sentence. So a question STEM is preferred because it enables the student to concentrate on responding to the question, as opposed to keeping the incomplete sentence in working memory and sequentially completing it with each possibility. The creation of the STEM with an initial or interior blank should be avoided because it adds to the cognitive load. So we also have here the suggestions for writing alternatives. First is, all alternatives should be plausible or reasonable. So the purpose of the mistaken alternatives is to act as distractions. Pupils who did not meet the learning objective should choose them, while those who did should ignore them. Implausible or unreasonable alternatives should not be used because they do not operate as functional distractors. The most reliable cause of distractions is typical student errors. Number 2, alternatives should be stated clearly and concisely. Overly wordy items evaluate students' reading skills rather than their proficiency in the learning aim. 3, alternatives should be mutually exclusive. Test takers may view alternatives with duplicate content as tricked items, and their frequent use might damage test takers' confidence in and respect for the testing procedure. Number 4, alternatives should be homogeneous in content. Alternatives with a variety of content can provide students with hints or clues about the right response. Number 5, alternatives should be free from clues about which response is correct. Connected to number 4. So intelligent test takers are aware of unintentional clues to the right response, such as distinctions in their choice's grammar, length, formatting, and language choice. Number 6, the alternatives all of the above and none of the above should not be used. When all of the above is an option, test takers who can recognize more than one choice as being correct can choose the right response, even if they are unsure about another options. Test takers who can reject one option can also eliminate another when none of the above is offered as an alternative. So students can use incomplete knowledge in which scenario to come up with the right response. So number 7, the alternatives should be presented in a logical order. I guess this one is self-explanatory, just to avoid a bias towards certain positions. And lastly, the number 8. The number of alternatives can vary among items as long as all alternatives are plausible or reasonable. So functional distractors alternatives that can be considered but are not taken are those that are selected by students who have not met the goal, but ignored by those who have. Between items with 2, 3, and 4 distractors, there is minimal variation in terms of difficulty, discrimination, and test score reliability. So we also have here the suggestions for measuring complex objectives with multiple choice items. The first one is, the objective should permit the measurement of understanding. Second, construct items in a form different from the one originally presented. Third, use novel pictorials to measure principles that require students to apply knowledge. Fourth, use analogies to measure relationships. Number 5, have students identify assumptions and analyze criteria. Number 6, have students discover relationships among similar topics. Number 7, have students select examples of principles or concepts. And number 8, use charts and tables. So those are the suggestions for measuring complex objectives with multiple choice items. Now for the scoring the multiple choice test. So children below the 4th grade should probably answer questions on the test booklet itself rather than on a separate answer sheet. A separate answer sheet is an advantage to older children since the scoring time and the scoring and counting errors can be reduced. It can also facilitate the analysis of the class's response to each item for diagnosis. Another modification in scoring a multiple choice test is by giving credits for every option the examiner recognizes as incorrect, rather than penalizing students for responding incorrectly. However, a penalty should be given for eliminating a correct alternative. Scoring can also be modified by having students identify the correct option if the correct answer is not among the options. Determining the optimal number of options. So the number of items on a test and the number of alternatives for each item affects the accuracy of measurements. A very short test cannot differentiate among different levels of student knowledge, while too many options may prove to be confusing to students and will limit the number of items they can answer. Current evidence shows that the teacher would be better off with 80 items, having 3 alternatives each than 60 items with 4 options each. 3 to 5 choices are reasonable for multiple choice tests. Here are the types of multiple choice tests. The stimulus material STEM options, STEM option example, negative STEM example, best answer example, contained options example, correct answer example, grouped options example, and of course the Morse variety example. So that is all for the multiple choice test, and the next one is true or false that will be discussed by Mr. John Noel Encinares. Thank you.
Good day. I am Alexis Nicole Hagos Inciso, and my assigned topic is all about oral question. Oral questions. Oral questioning provides immediate feedback to both pupils and teachers. It is frequently used by the teacher in the classroom. So, araw-araw, yung mga students are asked questions by their teachers. So, although yung mga sagot ng mga students may not be used by the teacher to help assign a final course grade, pwede pa rin magamit yung results para ma-improve yung teaching-learning situation. Oral questions is a variation of essay test. So, although it is often used in the final examination ng mga college students, it also deserves a brief mention because of its utility inside the classroom, lalong-lalo na sa mga primary and elementary grades. So next, what are the what are the advantages and limitation of both oral and essay examinations? Advantages. So both the oral and essay examination permit examiner to determine how well the students synthesize and organize his or her ideas and express himself or herself. So with the help of essay and oral questions, matutukoy kung paano mag-isip creatively ang isang students. So sa pamamagitan din ito, na-express or mai-express ng bata yung kanyang sarili. Next, both are not dependent, unlike the multiple choice test. So, on the ability of the students to recognize correct answer. So, both require that the students know and are able to supply the correct answer. So, they are able to supply the correct answer since the answers are or ay nakabase sa kanilang pananaw, opinion, stock knowledge, etc. And next is that they both permit free responses by the students. Next is the limitations. So both provide for a variety of limited sampling content. Both provide a rubrics, limited informations, or limited things that is needed to be done. Next is both have lower rate reliability. Since the answers ay pwedeng opinionated, there is no exact correct answer sa mga tanong. Next is setting criteria. So, how to set criteria sa mga activities na ginagawa mo or sa essay exams na pinapagawa mo. First is to focus on important aspects of an essay response. So, yung descriptions must focus on important aspects. Next is that the type of rating ay dapat nakafocus sa kung ano yung purpose ng assessment. Next, observable. So, yung description mo of ng criteria must be directly observable. Next is understandable. So, siguraduhin mo na yung criteria is naiintindihan ng students, ng parents, and others. Next, minimize error in scoring. So, these errors may be generosity error, so mga personal bias errors, central tendency error, your tendency to avoid making extreme judgments, and severity error, which means rating consistently overly negative on the performance, on the person or the ability of the participants. Next, make the scoring system feasible. So, make sure that it is possible to do. So, this is the example rubric for a persuasive essay test. So, the criteria, it is said that it must focus on the important aspects of an essay. So, nakafocus siya sa organization, word choice, sentence fluency, conventions. The rubric is also understandable since it is well given. I mean, the descriptions are well stated. Next, checklist for writing essay questions. So first are the questions restricted to measuring objectives that would not be assessed more efficiently by other test formats. So, in the setting criteria, sinabi doon na dapat nakafocus yung description sa mga important aspects. So, here, the questions must be restricted to measuring objectives. Next, does each question relate some instructional objective? May ugnayan ba yung mga tanong sa mga objectives or sa mga objectives ng lessons mo? Next, the question establish framework to guide the students to the expected answer. So, is there a framework that serves as a guide sa pagsagot? Next, the question novel, do that challenge. Do they challenge the students? So, nata-challenge ba yung brain ng students to answer in answering that question? Next, are the premises longer and more complex? Are the responses simple and short? Are all the students expected to answer the same question? That's it. So that is all for oral question.
Good day everyone, my name is Mary Antoinette Trejo and my assigned topics are completion tests and cloze tests. So completion test or short answer test, this format of testing requires the students to complete a sentence with the correct word or phrase. So some of the completion items may be used to assess different types of skills and knowledge. They are generally used to test basic knowledge. Next, advantages of completion test. First, construction of the completion test is relatively easy. The low level of complexity typically measure this type of test. However, constructing completion or short answer tests that measure the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy is difficult. Bloom's taxonomy has different levels of learning. Mas madaming skills and knowledge na kailangan para sa level of testing ng isang estudyante. Ang completion test ay madaling gawin at mas madaling maintindihan ng mga estudyante dahil hindi ito ganoong kakomplikado di parehas ng ibang pagsusulit. Next, guessing is eliminated because this test simply requires recall. It is not possible for students to recognize correct options of multiple choice tests but not in a completion test. Ito ay medyo mahirap sa mga estudyanteng madaling makalimot dahil ang mga maaaring maging sagot para sa completion test na ito ay pwedeng specific dates, events, or names. At di kagaya ng multiple choice ay may pagpipilian ka para maalala mo kung ano ang pwedeng maisagot dun sa tanong. Lastly, item sampling is improved. It takes less time to read and answer than do multiple choice tests. Hence, the teacher can give more items to measure the student's knowledge. So, ang completion test ay mas madaling masagutan dahil di kagaya ng multiple choice test, hindi mo na kailangan pang ulit-ulitin or uliting basahin pa yung tanong. At nakadepende rin sa teacher kung ilang items ang gusto niyang ibigay para masukat kung hanggang saan ang natutunan ng kanyang estudyante. Let's move to the disadvantages of the completion test. First, completion tests are difficult to score. When it comes to scoring, completion test is very time-consuming. Another disadvantage of the completion test is they typically measure rote memory. They are usually restricted to short words. Items tend to measure the recall of specific facts, names, places, and events, and rarely measure more complex outcomes. Just like what I've said earlier, mahirap ito para sa mga estudyanteng madaling makalimot. Dahil yung mga sagot dito sa completion test requires specific names, places, or events na kailangan mong maalala para may maisagot ka, dahil hindi ito kagaya ng multiple choice na may mapagpipilian ka. Let's move to the pointers on writing completion test or short item test. So first, write items that clearly imply the type of response desired for. Example, date, place, event, or a person's name. Next, use only one blank per item. More than one blank can confuse the students. Next, put the blank at the end of the item if possible. It helps the reader easily grasp what the task requires. Next, to facilitate scoring, have the students place all the answers in a single column. Students can be required to write in a column since answers vary in length. Then avoid using statements taken directly from the book since it defeats meaningful learning. Likewise, items directly lifted from the books may become ambiguous if taken out of control. This may also confuse the students. Next, avoid specific determiners. For example, if the answer starts in vowels, you must not put a determiner like an before the blank, because this practice gives student clues. Next, a direct question is generally preferred than an incomplete statement since less ambiguity and less confusion arise. Then, structure an item so that the required response should be concise. Then place the blank near the end of an incomplete sentence in the margin for direct question. For an incomplete statement type of items, restrict the number of blanks to one or at most two. These are made to avoid confusions. Next, blanks provided for answers should be equivalent. If the answer is short word, then the length of the blank must also be short. Likewise for the other words or phrases. Lastly, provide sufficient space for the answers. Let's move to the types of completion tests. First is the identification test. After reading the questions or the statement, you must identify or provide the answers and write it in the blank. For example, it refers to the process of summing up the results of tests, giving them some meaning based on the value of judgment. So what would be the answer? The answer is evaluation. After identifying the answer, you must write it at the end of the sentence and in the blank that is provided. Another type is the enumeration test. For example, list down the 3 branches of the Philippine government. So we are looking for the 3 branches. So you must enumerate the 3 branches of the Philippine government. What are these branches? So if you know the answer, you must write it down in the 1, 2, 3 blanks provided. So the 3 branches of the Philippine government are the legislative, judicial, and executive branches. Let's move on to the next type, filling the blanks. This example is from the national anthem of the Philippines, which is the Lupang Hinirang. And now you must provide the right words to make the song complete. The last one is the analogy. So analogy is a reasoning type of test in which the subject is required to supply the missing term in a relationship of the form A is to B and Y is to blank. For example, father is to son and mother is to blank. Then sun is to morning and the moon is to the blank. So the answer would be the mother is to daughter and the moon is to the night. The answers must be written in the provided blanks. So this will be the end of the discussion about the completion test. Now let's move on to the closed test. So closed test or closed deletion test is an exercise test or assessment consisting of a portion of a text with certain words removed, and the students are asked to replace the missing words. The closed test requires the ability to understand context and vocabulary to be able to identify the correct words or type of words that belong in the deleted passages of the text. So this closed test, it measures the reading comprehension of the students. Actually, closed test is similar to the fill in the blanks test. But in closed test, the multiple blanks are given within the passage, so it becomes important to understand the entire context of the passage to fill the blanks appropriately. While in the fill in the blanks questions, the response is purely based on the given sentence only. For example, today I went to the blank and bought some milk and eggs. So kahit na walang pagpipilian, nasa context mismo ang sagot. Kailangan mo lang intindihin at unawain para maging tama ang sagot na ilalagay mo. So kung ikaw yung tatanungin, saan ka pupunta kung bibili ka ng itlog at gatas? So the answer would probably the market. Today I went to the market and bought some milk and eggs. I knew it was going to rain but I forgot to take my blank and ended up getting wet on the way. So para hindi ka mabasa ng ulan, ano ang gagamitin mo? Pwede dito, payong o kaya kapote. I knew it was going to rain but I forgot to take my umbrella or raincoat and ended up getting wet on the way. So before answering in closed test, you must understand first the context of the sentence so that you'll provide the right answer and appropriate words to use. So this will be the end of my discussion. Thank you for listening.
I will discuss about essay test. So what is essay test? First, so this type of test differs from the completion test in degree rather than in kind. So essay usually allow greater freedom of response to questions and require more writing. So an essay test may give full freedom to the students to write any number of pages. So the required response may vary in length. So an essay test type of questions requires the students to plan his own answer and to explain it in his own words. So the students exercise considerable freedom to select, organize, and present his ideas. Essay type tests provide a better indication of a student's real achievement in learning. In essay tests have advantages. First, essay give students freedom to respond within broad limits. In essay, examinations allow students to express their ideas with relatively few restraints. Next, guessing is eliminated. So in an essays involve recall and there are no options to select from, and the students is expected to supply rather than select the proper response. Next, essay items are practical for testing a small number of students. However, as the number of students increases, the advantages of essay tests decrease. Next, essay tests reduce assembling time. So less time is required for typing, mimeographing, and assembling. If only a few questions are asked, so the teacher can just write them on the board. The last is they can measure divergent thinking. So, divergent thinking is indicated by unconventional, creative, relatively free responses because they allow great freedom in answering. The opportunity to obtain unusual responses is increased. Next, it have disadvantages and limitations of essay tests. First, essays are difficult to score objectively because the students have greater freedom of expression. Um, Also, long, complex essays are more difficult to score than shorter, more limited ones. Number two, extended essays measure only the limited aspects of students' knowledge. So, because extended responses require time to write, only a few questions can be given to the students. Thus, essay test sample limited content are not always a fair measure of what the student actually knows. So this problem is less serious when responses are limited and the number of items are increased. Number 3, essay questions are time consuming for teachers and students. Therefore, students often spend much time answering only one or two extended essay questions, which may severely limit sampling their knowledge. So, teachers, in the meantime, also devote much time reading lengthy responses. Next, essays eliminate guessing but not bluffing. So, in poorly prepared students desperately attempt to get a passing grade by answering even if their responses are not related to the questions asked. Number 5, most essays require a little more than rote memory. So in this essay, in practice, very few essays require originality and most emphasize lengthy enumeration of memorized facts or trends. Lastly is essay test place a premium on writing. So in a students can read much more rapidly than they can write. So much of the time allotted to answering an essay question is devoted to the mechanics of writing and there is relatively little time to think about content. So on more objectively scored tests, little time is spent in writing and more time is used in thinking about responses. So if the teacher does not attempt to measure writing skills, so a multiple choice test will probably provide more information per unit of the time than with an essay. Essay tests have a use of essay tests to facilitate learning. So there are varied ideas for and against essay testing. We have raises the quality of writing, teaches students to organize, outline, and summarize assignments rather than simply look for facts, dates, and details expected in TF or multiple choice tests. Likewise, there are arguments against essay tests. It is an essay test do not allow students to revise and rewrite their work since time is allotted. So the teachers over attentions to details can destroy the themes of essay. Next, situations that suggest the use of essay questions. First, if the test objectives specify that students have to write, recall, or supply information, an essay examination may be necessary. So, in objectives that suggest extended student responses also suggest the use of essays. Number two, when the class size is small, the teacher can afford to spend more time reading essay responses. In reading extended responses for large classes may prove to be excessively time consuming. Number three, since multiple choice tests are difficult to construct but easy to score. So they are considered more practical when the tests can be reused. So if the tests can be used only one, an essay examination may be more convenient than a multiple choice one. In essay questions have 20 categories, according to Carter 1978. Number 1, selected, recall, or bases given. Example, name the congressman who died while still holding office. Number 2, evaluating recall, or bases given. Example, name the 3 most important senators who work on the improvement of quality education. Number 3, comparison of 2 things, or in general. Example, compare norm and criterion reference evaluation. Number 4, comparison of 2 things or on a single basis. Example, compare the effects of extreme scores on the mean and the median. Number 5, causes or effects. Example, why did insurgency rapidly develop in the Philippines during martial law? Number 6, decision or for or against. Example, should there be a constitution's amendment? You can defend your answer. Number 7, explanation of the use or exact meaning of some phrase or statements in a passage. Example, what does "be salt in the earth" mean? Number 8, summary of one unit of the test or some articles that were read. Example, summarize in not more than one page. So the advantages and limitations of essay test. Number 9, analysis. Example, does national testing improve students' learning? Number 10, statement of relationship. Example, why does validity imply reliability but not to reverse? 11, illustrations or examples or the student's own of the principles in science, constructions in knowledge, or other subject matter. Number 12, classification. Example, to what group of compounds do sucrose and lactose belong? Explain your answer. Number 13, application of rules or principles in new situations. Example, using the same principles on test construction, develop a higher order thinking question in science. Number 14, discussion. Example, discuss the learning theory of Piaget. Number 15, a statement of aim. Example, why did the author end the story that way? 16, criticism. Example, critique the government's fiscal management. 17, outline. Example, outline the principal steps on how to conduct logical research. 18, reorganization of facts. Example, trace the development of the industrial preparations in contrast to the laboratory preparations of nitric acid. 19. Formulation of new questions or problems and questions raised. Example, what else must you know in order to understand the matter under consideration? Number 20. Last, new methods of or procedures. Example, devise another procedure for testing students who are unable to read. Discuss your method fully. Next, pointers on writing essay questions. An essay question, the difficulty in scoring essays tests on the teacher's failure to precisely specify what they want their students to do. So some teachers are not sure of what they want. So others know but fail to communicate this to students. In either case, the ambiguity of the essay question and the lack of scoring standards reduce the effectiveness of essay tests. So there are the following suggestions should be useful in writing essay or in writing essay questions. First, specify limitations. You can tell the students the length of the desired response and the weight each question will be given when determining the scores. So this includes the time to be spent on each item, the approximate number of words per item, maximum points per item, and maximum amount of space to be devoted for each item. Next, structure the task. In the structures should clearly specify the task. So most essay questions are so vague that the instructor's intent is lost. Number 3, make each item relatively short and increase the number of items. In essay tests, the more items there are, the greater chance there is of the sampling of knowledge. Number 4, give all the students the same essay questions if content is relevant. In essay tests, sometimes teachers give the students the opportunity to deal with one or two items from a set of essay questions. Last, ask questions in a direct manner. So you can avoid deviousness and pedanticism when framing questions. So there are suggestions for rating or scoring essay questions. In essay tests may be scored in 4 ways, which is analytic or point system, universal or holistic approach, sorting method, and demerits. First, the analytic or point system. So it is useful in scoring a large number of limited response essay questions. The teachers using this method to decide how much weight each question will have and inform students of the number of points necessary for a perfect score on each question. So, the student's total score is the sum of the points awarded to each answer. Next, the universal or holistic approach. It gives the general impressions to all the answers to the questions. The student's total score is based on the overall quality for all answers to all the questions. Next, the sorting method. It is a more appropriate than the points system for rating longer essays. Rather than examining every sentence or main idea to determine how many points the student should receive. So the best papers are placed on one pile, the worst on the other, and the intermediates in between them. So after the papers are initially sorted, they are read to ensure homogeneity, maximizing differences between or among groups, and reducing the differences between groups should be the goal of the teacher. Last, teachers using demerits deduct points for inconsistencies in the student's answer. This is usually happens when the essay responses are expanded. So as the students further discuss their answers, they become more prone to committing contradicting statements. Um, in the grading of essay responses, one must observe the following suggestion. Number one, remove names from papers before grading. Number two, read and evaluate each student's answer to the same question before going to the next. Number three, keep the scores of previously read items out of sight when evaluating remaining questions. Number four, decide on a policy for dealing with irrelevant responses. Number five, if possible, you can reread or have other teachers read the papers before returning them to the students. Number six, check the scoring key against actual responses. 7. Be consistent when grading. 8. The mechanics of expression should be judged separately from what the student writes. Number 9. If possible, have two independent readings of the test and use the average as the final score. Number 10. Provide comments and correct errors. Last, set realistic standards. So, an essay test, there are factors to be considered in assigning point values. Number 1, time needed to respond. Number 2, complicity of the question. Number 3, emphasis placed on the content. So, the other considerations in grading essay responses. First, use appropriate methods to minimize biases. Pay attention only the significant aspects of the answer. You can avoid letting personal idiosyncrasies affect the grading. Number 4, apply uniform standards in grading all the papers. Last, why are essay tests still popular? An essay test can indirectly measure attitudes, values, and opinions. In a good essay tests are more easily prepared than good objective tests. So in an essay test are good learning experiences. That's all. Thank you.
Good day to you all. I am Januel B. Encinares, BPED 3A students, and here is the part of reporting that I was assigned for. My topic is true or false test or assessment. So, what is true or false test? This type of test requires the examinee to recognize and mark an item as true or false. 50-50 chance na makuha ng student ang tamang answer sa true or false. And in a traditional true or false question, students are asked to judge whether a fraction statement is true or false. Yung true or false, intatest nito yung level of knowledge ng estudyante on their assessing their higher thinking skills. So, what are the advantages of true or false test? First is the item sampling. Second is ease of construction. 3 is of scoring. So, ano ang item sampling? Ang item sampling, true or false test or items and answer tends to be short. Teachers can examine students on more materials than they can with any other type of test. The true or false or TF test can help ensure an adequate sample of item when a great deal of subject matter must be covered. Ang ease of construction naman is teacher can construct items of this type of lifting statement from the book and rewarding some of them to make false items. However, this must be avoided since items may become ambitious. The said practice also take less time to construct, likewise promotes rote memorization. So, ang is-scoring naman, so again, ang scoring is relatively mechanical as the student has to only agree or disagree with the item. The difficulty lies in the penmanship of the student, as some would write T in the longhand and be ready or appear as F. This can be remedied by requiring students to write in print, write the full word, or shade a circle correspondingly. So what is the disadvantage of true or false test? Number 1 is emphasis on rote memorization, dependence on absolute judgment, likelihood of guessing. So, emphasis of rote memorization. Yung nag-aasa na lang yung bata sa memorization sa lessons. Yung parehas ng memorize niyo yung illustration ng sa lesson ng teacher because naniwala siya na nasa exam yun or test ng teacher. Yung dependence on absolute judgment naman, the true or false test presumes the dichotomous word where things are either a falsity or truth, and the possibility of intermediate values are not easily admitted. Although most facts are not entirely true or false and still require qualification, it is unfair to ask the student to guess at the teacher's criteria for the evaluation of the truth or falsity of any statement. So, likelihood of guessing naman. So, what is likelihood of guessing? This type of test allows a high degree of guessing. Statistically, An examinee has always the chance of obtaining 50% correct answer. Students uncertain of their answer can always guess and hope to answer correctly. Ito yung sinasabi ko na 50-50 ang chance ng student kung true or false test. Kasi dalawa ang pagpipilian. Either is true or either is false. So what types of true or false test? What types of true or false test? So again, types of true or false test. Number 1 is simple true or false. Ang simple true or false is kadalasan nakalagay dito is right true if the statement is correct and false if otherwise. Ito yung laging ginagamit ng mga teachers sa true or false. So number 2 naman is modified true or false. Sa modified is nakalagay dito is right true if the statement is valid and false if otherwise. If the statement is false, underline the words or word that made it wrong. May babaguhin kang word o words sa statement kung false yon. And ilalagay mo lang true kung true yung statement. Sa number 3 naman, true or false with corrections. True or false with correction naman is right true if the statement is correct and false if otherwise. If the statement is false, rewrite or change the statement to make it right. Dito naman kasi is babaguhin mo ang statement. Hindi lang may papalitan, kundi babaguhin mo. Ito yung pagkaiba ng modified true false sa true or false with corrections. So number 4 is cluster true or false. Nakalagay dito is circle T if the statement is true and F if it is false. Ito yung may isa-circle ka lang kasi actually parang madali lang din naman nito kasi isa-circle mo lang yung T or F. So number 5, true or false with options. Ito yung may A, B, C, D na options. Kunwari, binigyan ka ng statement, tapos yung answer naman is, example is A, if only the statement is true. B, if only the second statement is true. C, if both statements are true, and D, if both statements are false. Mga ito yan. Ito yung mga examples and paliwanag. So sa checklist naman, checklist for writing true or false items. Yung mga factors dito is have 9. Number 1 is was each item expressed in clear, simple language. Number 2 is what was lifting statements verbatim from the text avoided. Number 3, have negative statement have avoided where possible. Number 4, have specific determinants such as all, may, and sometimes been avoided. Have double barrels items been avoided. Have trick question been removed. each item clearly true or false? Is there approximately the same number of true or false items? So last is, have the items been edited? So kung gagawa ng true or false items, ito yung pagbabasihan mo na 1 to 9. So sa part 2 naman na aking report is matching type test. So ano nga ba ang matching type test? Matching is a test item type where test takers can demonstrate their ability to connect ideas, themes, statement, numbers, expressions, or solution with supporting evidence, definition, equivalent, expressions, and so forth. So, ang matching type test is similar to the multiple choice test. In this kind of test, the examinee associate an item in one column with a choice in the second column. Ito yung picture na example. Sa advantages of matching type test, number 1 is an efficient way to assess the association between a variety of items with a given topic. Number 2 is the easy to construct. Number 3, scoring is usually quick and objective. Number 4 is easily administered to a large number of students. So, advantages of matching type test. The matching type test is simple to construct and score. It is well suited in measuring association like multiple choice test. It presents the students with questions and alternatives. It reduces the effects of guessing, although the chance of guessing increases as the student progresses in the answering items. This, however, is easily remedied by adding more options. Sa disadvantage of matching type test, it has difficulty to generate a sufficient numbers of possible premises, may limit assessment to lower levels of understanding. Homogeneous topics are required. Number 4 is may overestimated learning due to influence of testing. It tends to ask students to associate trivial information. Unfortunately, most matching type tests emphasize memorization, although it is impossible to construct items that measure more complex cognitive skills. In case of commercial answer sheets, matching items can accommodate no more than 5 options. So here's are the types of matching type tests. So number 1 is perfect matching happens when an option is the only answer to one of the item in a column A. Ito yung example. So number 2, imperfect matching happens when an option is the answer to more than one item in the column. So kunwari may number 1, tapos sa column B naman is dalawa yung answer. So sa number 1 kasi na sinasabi dito is sa column A and column B is one answer lang naman. So sa number 2 kasi kunwari sa example sa column A, answer sa number 1 is A and B. Ganon. Dalawa yung answer. So, sa number 3, sequencing matching requires the examinees to arrange things, steps, or even in chronological order. So, ganito. Example is, arrange the steps on how to conduct historical research. Ito. Magbubutang ka lang ng 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pagkakasunod-sunod niyan. Tapos, so number 4 is multiple matching requires the examinees to match the item in column A to B, then match the answer from column B to column C, and further match answer from column C to column D. So, marami ito. May column A, B, and C, and D. Pero isa lang naman yung answer niyan, hindi pares ng number 2. So, in the checklist for writing matching type test, ito yung mga kailangan kong gagawa. We have 8. Number 1 is, have you given the students clear, explicit instructions? Number 2, are the respondents and premised list both homogeneous? Number 3 is one list shorter than the other? Number 4, are both lists between 5 to 15 entries? Number 5, are the premises longer and more complex? Are the respondents simply and short? Number 6, are the respondents arranged in systematic order? Number 7, are both lists relatively free of clues? Number 8, do both lists appeared on the same page? So, yun lang po. Salamat sa pakikinig. So, in summary, diniscuss dito yung advantages and disadvantages ng true or false test. Tinukoy rin dito ang mga types. So, sa number 2 na aking topic is yung matching type test. Tinukoy rin ang advantage, disadvantages, and types. And yung writing checklist for writing the true or false and the matching types. Salamat po sa pakinig at ingat kayo.